beliefs is going to address this sensitive issue differently. So I think everyone's a little uncomfortable and no one really knows what to say.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I think, being from California, they wanted everyone to have a baseline. And of course you could opt out of it if you, for religious reasons or whatever, you didn't want your children to be talking about it in public school. But you're right. I mean, the combination of, our kids are being raised not only by us. I mean, I don't have kids, but children generally are being raised in families, but the school is also responsible for kind of turning them into responsible human beings as well. And who's responsible for what and what ends up falling through the cracks. And I think that this often kind of ends up falling through the cracks.
You know what? And the danger with that is because we already talked about the inevitability of this event.
Yeah.
If nothing is done in these cases, the default is not a positive experience for the girl or for the menstruator in general.
No, of course not.
It's a negative one. So then it becomes our responsibility, knowing that, having that information, to do something about it. And this box that I've created was my attempt at trying to solve this problem, because I have spoken with hundreds of women, because every time I introduce what I do, women immediately tend to respond with, "Oh, my first period story was horrible."
Yeah, sure. Of course.
And so I've just heard such a range. There have been some positive, but it is overwhelmingly negative. And women are really great because they're so resilient about laughing about it. But truly, if you do a little bit of unpacking with them, tears come out. It's very emotional. It's still like a very tender spot because it's a time in our lives where we start to realize we're different and maybe not viewed in a good way. And I feel like I watched girls in elementary school stop climbing trees. I watched them perform a little bit less in school. And I don't necessarily know if it's because they wanted to. It was because they lost their confidence and they didn't know how to cope and they felt weird and strange and dirty, and no one was talking about it.
I mean, it's so sad that like a half of the population were just kind of abandoning in a moment where they really need to be brought closer.
Yes, brought closer. I love that image because it's like a bringing in, a holding into your bosom, a welcoming into womanhood. And I think about the stories my mom told me growing up about Native American and Aboriginal traditions and ideas of initiation. And a lot of other cultures, when the boy or the girl is hitting puberty, there is some sort of celebration. There's some sort of ceremony, or there's a trial or a challenge. Boys might go on the vision quest, and women might then be invited into the Moon Lodge to experience their monthly bleed with other women and be in community with other women and take that time for meditation. So that's beautiful. I love that image. And with the coming of age in these cultures, there's a marked change in your day-to-day responsibilities. So you are now a man. So you go out and you hunt with the men, or, you are now a woman. You help with the children, or you help with these duties. And so that's very tangible. But in our society and in Western culture, there isn't really anything like that. And you get a period and you just feel ill-equipped and your life looks the same, except you have this like horrible event now that you have to deal with is really how we're viewing it.
Yeah. And I think Beatrice and I talked about this when we talked about like cultural taboos and cultural myths around menstruation. In a lot of cultures, it's something that actually makes women more powerful, and they are excluded from ceremonies because the power of menstruation, the power, while they're menstruating, the power of their menstrual cycle can upend and change the way that like mystical energy is, because they are so powerful in those moments. And exactly. And I just think, if we flip the script on it and say like, this is something that actually makes you really powerful. And you see women with with posters and t-shirts that say, anything you can do, I can do bleeding, which I think is,
yes.
Kind of the pithy way of saying like, I can do that while I'm undergoing like something very difficult with my body. Some people don't have great periods and their periods themselves are physically traumatic to them. But to say like, this is something that makes you powerful, that really gives us an entirely different perspective on it.
Completely. And I think I read the exact same thing as you. I read something saying, well, it's interesting because a lot of the history that we have written down from some of these indigenous cultures were white male anthropology people who were going in and observing. They didn't speak the language, and they would say, oh, well, all the women are shunned when they're on their period. But really what was happening is exactly what you said, is that the women's power while they were bleeding was so much so that it would throw off the shaman.
Yeah.
So they would just be invited to their moon lodge to be in meditation there. And then after their meditation, they would bring those gifts because it was seen as a time where that spiritual veil was the thinnest between this world and the spiritual world. And that's when those women would really collect this knowledge and then bring it back to their communities to serve.
Yeah.
So I love that. I completely agree with you.
I love that you've turned your period into something entrepreneurial. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. And it's so funny. We've been talking about first periods, but Elizabeth, lately I've had this insurgence of orders that have been women who are already menstruating, maybe in their 20s, their 30s, even their 40s, who have purchased this box for themselves to reclaim.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that idea that like, I'm going to totally redefine what it means to have my period for me, like well into my period having years.
Yes. And I hand delivered one to a friend last night, and I got to actually watch someone open one for the first time.
Oh, that's fun. Like an unboxing.
Totally. I mean, because I've seen videos and I've read reviews, but I'd never actually witnessed someone opening one. And it was super powerful for me, super emotional. And this friend had ordered one for herself because she is just getting off of hormonal birth control.
Oh, yeah.
And she's getting ready to have her first natural cycle, essentially, since she started her period. And so she wanted to buy a box for herself to celebrate getting in tune with her body's natural cycle. And so I watched her open every single, go through every single item. Some of the items that are in the box currently are, we have a beautiful feminine balance tea. Mm-hmm. It's hormone regulating. We have a cloth pad in there. We have organic pads. We have organic tampons. We have a special moon cycle candle that we've curated, a blend of essential oils that's in that candle. It's specifically made for moon time. Yes. We have a menstrual cup in there. There's a little booklet talking about your period, talking about the moon cycle, talking about how to chart your period and how to choose the right menstrual products for you, because everybody's body is different. Yeah. And that was something that was really important to me in creating this box. Is I wanted to give girls permission to have agency over their body.
Yeah.
And in that is choice.
Absolutely.
So I tried to include reusables and disposable menstrual products. I wanted them to be able to canvas everything, try it all, and decide what was right for them. Because if you're a girl and someone says, hey, you get to choose what to do with your body, do you not think that's going to be a super important ideal for them to hold on to when it comes to making informed decisions in the future about sex, about how to feed their body, about how to exercise their body? It really, for me, starts here.
I totally agree. I saw some sort of article on Facebook the other day of somebody talking about, not forcing your children to hug people at the holidays. And I just thought, man, like teaching kids that their body is their body and that they don't have to, they don't have to hug their like aunt who comes to visit, or they don't have to say, give everybody a hug when they even like friends of the family, they don't have to do that. And telling them that their body is their own and they get to make choices about it. And your period is something so personal that that's just the perfect place to tell kids having periods, like, you get to make a choice. And these are the variety of options. And then once they make the choice, they can share that with their friends. They have experience of using all of these products. And then they can have these conversations with their friends and say, oh, I use a cup because of XYZ, but I tried out disposable pads and, this was my experience with them and I have some left over. Do you want to use them? Then it becomes something that they're sharing amongst one another and they're talking about instead of something that's just hidden in your pocket and you try not to let anybody see it when you go to the bathroom.
Absolutely. And even beyond the girls, I have been so joyful to see the feedback from moms.
Oh, yeah.
And the moms have said to me, I didn't know what a menstrual cup was, and now I'm ordering one. And it's not only giving permission to these girls, but again, to these mothers to rediscover their own cycle. Yeah. Kind of just take a second look at the choices that we've made. Yeah. It's really been such a blessing. And single dads too.
Oh gosh.
Because I think that, I think that we've now recognized that this event is important psychologically. Yeah. It has an impact. And so you get parents who want to talk about it. They weren't told about it. They have no idea how to approach it.
Sure.
And they're uncomfortable, which makes sense.
Yeah. Not every mom is like your mom.
No. In fact, I would say a lot aren't. And that's totally okay because, again, we're talking about cycles that happen over generations. Yeah. These changes take a long time to make. And we also have to do it gently. We can't get angry at people for what they don't know. I think everybody out there on the planet is really trying. They're trying to do their best. And the best thing that we can do is present people with options and approach everything with kindness and compassion and a sense of ease and gentleness. So that's what this box is for me. It is part of the feminist movement, but it's also done in a way that is, I think, pretty gentle and pretty palatable for most people.
Well, and the idea that it's a cycle and that every month you have an opportunity to start over and that your period isn't just the, 5 to 7 to however many days you're actually bleeding. It's the entire 28-ish days that you are experiencing your body. And every time it starts anew and every time is another opportunity to, I don't want to say get it right because there's nothing wrong, but to see what else there is in your cycle.
Absolutely. Again, it kind of goes back to that idea of darkness and light. And women get so much flack about PMS and, oh, you must be PMSing. And I have really reframed the way that I look at experiencing hormonal changes, which is, it's not that we're just grumpy and moody. It's that when we're going through these pretty real physiological changes, chemical changes every month. I mean, that's what it is. And I think the entire population needs to realize how real this is. It's not just phantom stuff happening in our brain. We just have a lower threshold for the same stuff that we've been putting up with the rest of the weeks of the month. And for me, it's just really an invitation to touch in with my truth. It's not that I'm grumpy. It's that so-and-so has been doing this and it's been bothering me, but I haven't been saying anything to them. I haven't been standing in my truth. I haven't been standing in my power. So now I'm feeling this because it's around my moon time. And that's an invitation for me to say, hey, listen, this has really been bothering me. Can we talk about it?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because Beatrice and I had a conversation on the podcast about some people have really bad, issues. Some people have actually more energy because of just the way that their biology is. And the way that I think about it is, it's an intensification of the emotions that you were already feeling, that you already had. It's just that you experience them maybe more deeply. You have maybe more empathy during these, specific times or less patience because there's a lot more going on with you. And if you can recognize that, either because you're charting your period and it's, I'm going to be a little more sensitive. I'm going to have a few more tender spots during, this next few days. If you're paying attention to that, then you're actually opening yourself up to being more empathetic toward people and more aware of what's going on with you and the world around you and how you're interacting with it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just think I think that turning your own kind of menstrual story into like an entrepreneurial opportunity, it's just such an amazing, really positive way to open up the experience that you had to other people.